Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about the failed 2004 unaired Mr. Ed pilot that Fox tried to create with Sherman Hemsley as Mr. Ed. Just like many of you, I was very shocked to find out this thing almost like came to fruition. I'm surprised this thing existed. Like, I remember when I first found this thing many years ago because I was researching some show that was an unaired pilot. And so I decided to look at other unaired pilots and try to find them on YouTube. And I found the Mr. Ed one. Oh my God, this thing is terrible. It is a travesty. It is like a train wreck. It's terrible. And I feel so sorry for every person that was involved in this thing. Luckily, they all bounced back in some way or another with their acting careers for the most part. But oh my God, this thing is dreadful. Basically, it's the typical, oh, something people like, so let's make a reboot and let's make it modern without giving it what made it so special about the original. In this iteration, Wilbur, who is from New York, he has a family, a wife, a daughter, and a son, and they move out to the country. And of course, it's your typical like family. He's the energetic, go-getter type person. Wilbur is. You have his wife, who's kind of like, why do we move here? I don't want to move here. I miss the city. You have the like, kind of like the dumb blonde like daughter who is very teen angsty and like rebellious and everything, and then you have like the stupid dumb like little kid brother who's just like annoying. And this show stems from like a litany of bad writing. I am allergic to bad writing. Achoo. And I don't like sneezing and coughing all the time. And it really pains me to have to be ill from bad writing. Bad jokes and bad outdated jokes. You have slut shaming, you have homophobic jokes, you have like just like dumb humor, you have like raunchy humor, you have like filthy mouth humor, you have like sexual humor. Like they literally cuss and talk about like the size of the horses, you know what. You know what I'm saying? Like the size of his shillelagh and everything. And it's just kind of like, why is that in Mr. Ed? Like I get you trying to make that modern for an early 2000 audience, but why push it so far from what it used to be? Also in this version, Mr. Ed drinks whiskey. I just don't remember that from the older one. Like I don't remember much, but I could have sworn I never remember him drinking whiskey and stuff. And also when he uses the phone to dial like a number with his giant hoof, it's obviously a stuffed animal's like hand and everything. But here's the thing, or hoof or whatever. But here's the thing. Now back in the old days, they had like the dial phone, so that makes sense if a horse was to like use that. 'Cause all they had to do was like hit the thing and land on the number. But with this one, they have him actually pressing the buttons. How in the world he gonna be able to do that? Nobody really seems like they want to even be on that show, except for probably the dad and the handyman. I couldn't believe who the handyman is. I didn't know who he was at that time, but oh, I know him now from Fear the Walking Dead. And I feel so bad for Sherman Hemsley. Like, if you don't know who this man is, he is like a comedic legend from like the 70s and stuff with the Jeffersons in the 90s or 80s. I can't remember which one. He had 8 Men. Now, I was too young to even know what the Jeffersons was because I wasn't born then. I just never decided to watch it only because like it's so old. But yeah, I loved 8 Men. That was a great show. And Sherman Hemsley, he's pretty much, he acts the same way and everything else. Like his comedy is about being loud, in your face, and like crude and everything. And he always has that walk. In every series he has that walk. And I remember in the UPN days, there was in the late 90s, he was in a show called Bad Behavior where he's like the grandfather who just got out of prison, went to go live with his son and his family, and Brianna Lawson was in that, and it didn't do that well. Only lasted for like one season and stuff. And after that, like his career kind of started like to slow down because he kept playing the same type of role, like this hip older man who's like loud and in your face. And so he was still getting roles, mostly like guest appearances and stuff like that. He was also in like that dinosaur show where he was like the boss. Oh, I missed that show so much. So I'm very glad this show like was not greenlit on Fox because it would have been a shame to see his like acting career like that be one of like the last things he's known for, which would have been a shame. This man's a legend, you know what I'm saying? Like seriously, this man has made people laugh for like over 40, 50 something years and plus. Now the guy who plays the handyman named Jim, I could not believe who this was. It's Garrett Dylan Hunt, I think that's how you say his last name. He played John Dory in Fear the Walking Dead, the junior one, not the senior one. And I'm just like, no way, that's him. Thank God he bounced back big time from this because this could have like ruined everybody's like acting career if it would have gotten to fruition. There's only one person who really doesn't act no more. That was like the little kid boy. I'll get into him a little bit later, but like, yeah, he plays the handyman, and the handyman is this dopey idiot who suspects that Wilbur. He always keeps seeing Wilbur like talk to himself, but he's really talking to Mr. Ed, and he thinks there's something strange going on. So it would have been him doing the comedic shenanigans of like him trying to figure out what's going on. He's also like a big country hick, and like Garrett overacts so much in this role. It's a crying shame. Everybody overacts in this show. Everybody's acting is terrible in this show. Everybody's. David Allen Bassey, he's the one who plays like Wilbur. And he's very like, here's the thing about Mr. Ed, the old-fashioned one. I don't remember much about it because I remember being a kid watching it, but I do remember watching it. I just remember it being like a great show, a little bit of a smart mouth, little horse. Wilbur kind of like getting on to Mr. Ed about everything, and and just like all this cool like shenanigan type stuff happening with very crude like practical CGI type stuff, practical effects, and it was great. I just remember it being great and wholesome. This new Wilbur, he's more like the go-getter dad. He tries to make the best out of every situation. Now the actor, he's best known for playing like in The Exorcist. And so like the thing about him, like this Wilbur Pope, it's like he's just like annoying in a way because he's such a go-getter and not in a fun kind of way, and how he like him and his daughter don't get along at all. He tells his wife, we haven't gotten along since she was 12, and so like he literally slut shames her by talking about she's dressed like a tramp because she's showing her midsection. Back in like the late mid and late like 90s and early 2000s, females used to show their belly buttons in their shirts and stuff. This was known as a midriff. Then you have Blake Woodendorf, and he played Danny. And so he is the youngest son. He's the annoying one. Like, he is best known, his acting career has pretty much stopped. Like, he's best known for doing both the Cheaper by the Dozen rebooted movies in the early 2000s. The one with the dude from Smallville, and And you know it's ironic? They're gonna make a reboot of Cheaper by the Dozen on Disney Plus. It's gonna be a multiracial family. And the Daniel twins I just spoke about in the Sweet Valley High, they're gonna be in it in some capacity. Even Cynthia, who has come out of retirement slightly. And I remember I found this out because I was looking up Cynthia, see what has she been a part of anything since she retired from acting. And so she's gonna be in that, her and her sister. So that'll be cool. I want to see what they look like now. And the whole Cheap About a Dozen thing, I remember I saw one of the reboot movies. 'Cause it's funny, Cheap About a Dozen is a reboot of a reboot of a reboot. Like these movies came back out like in the 70s, then they rebooted it in like the early 2000s. Now they're gonna reboot it again. I just hope it's not like that Sweet Home Alone movie. Because Disney Plus, man, I don't know what the world they're doing when it comes to their movies and stuff. But yeah. So he plays like the annoying little brother. Like he's very loud. Like he overacts. And he talks about wanting to blow up like mailboxes. And if they are blown up, then you know it's him. What kind of like dialogue is that? And he does it with a big smile on his face. And when the handyman tells him, you know, the city y'all live in, the one y'all moved to just now, is like the capital of like kidnapping. And so the little kid's like, yes, we're gonna get kidnapped. I'm just like, what the world kind of dialogue is that? And like the last one is Sarah Paxton. She plays the daughter, Amanda. And she's best known for like SpongeBob, a lot of stuff with Disney Channel, Good Girls. And so like, you know, oh, she's also from I think something called Darcy's Wildlife. That was on like Discovery or something like that. And so like she is the angsty teen. She hates being in the country. She's always on her cell phone. She hates her dad because he's like annoying to her and stuff. She dates older men. She ends up dating two older men in this pilot and everything. One we see on screen, the other one we don't. And it's just like, why? Why are they having her date older men? And they're trying, and the mom is trying to like be supportive and be all like, oh, cause like, you know, let her date who she wants. And it's like, what the world? So you can find this on YouTube, but pretty much it goes like this. They move, like I said, to the country. They hate it there except for the dad. And then they find out they have a horse in the barn. It came with the house. And the handyman is very eccentric and stupid. So the handyman ends up catching a raccoon that was in the house. But he doesn't just want to take it out to the wild just yet because he keeps finding more. There's like babies and stuff, right? So like the daughter and the father, they can't like get along, and he slut shames her. And then at some point in time, like he's in the barn and he's talking to his wife, and the wife's all like she doesn't want to be here and all this other stuff. And then of course Mr. Ed starts talking, and you can tell Sherman did not want to take this role. It's just he didn't even sound like Mr. Ed, like hello Wilbur. Like he didn't sound nothing like that. Like he just talked in his normal voice and did a lot of shouting and talking like really loud and trying to be funny, but there were no funny jokes in this whatsoever. It was like joke after joke after joke, and this funny thing that was supposed to happen but never laughed. Speaking of which, this is filmed on location and they use a laugh track. That doesn't mesh well together. When you're on location and you put like a laugh track, it feels out of place because this feels like it should be something like Young Shelton, like, you know, like a coming of age type show that's like realism looking, but then you hear like a laugh track in the back. It just feels so out of place. And so Ed talks to Wilbur, and Wilbur can't believe it, and it's just some of the corniest dialogue ever and some of the most crudest humor. Like none of the humor in this is funny, and it's just rude, over the top, raunchy, crude like humor because it's Fox and everything, but it doesn't mesh well with like Mr. Ed. And when every time he talks, it doesn't sound like he's a horse talking. It just sounds like, you know, somebody's in the background talking, hiding around somewhere, you know. And so he tries to get his wife to like listen to Mr. Ed, but he won't talk. And then he tells Wilbur straight up, the reason why I didn't talk around your wife because there's two things I hate. One of those things is women. And it's just like, What? So then Amanda talks about how she has like a boyfriend and this and that, and he doesn't like the idea of her dating one, and also Mr. Ed doesn't like the idea of her dating a guy either, mainly because he finds out who it is, some guy named Hank. And Hank is this like major player who gets like a lot of like, as he puts it, tail. And Mr. Ed talks about how he gets a lot of tail for like a horse, and because he has a big, you know what? I'm just like, who's writing this stuff? Like on Comedy Central or something? It's like, who's writing this crap? And so then Mr. Ed does what he always does. He gets on the phone and he dials with his big hoof and he tries to scare away, like, what's the name, boyfriend. But Amanda comes home pissed, talking about dad scared away my boyfriend because Mr. Ed pretended to be Wilbur and stuff. So then the mom's all like, I invited Hank over and you're gonna like apologize and this and that. So he keeps trying to tell Wilbur, hey, you know, this dude's bad for your daughter and blah, 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 blah. And then when they meet him, he's trying to be charming, talking about my dad died in a tornado and everything. Then he goes outside with Amanda talking about, oh, I lied about my whole dad. And late on the night when your parents are asleep, let's go out to the barn. Because he plans on clickety clacking her and stuff. And so she doesn't really want to do that, but he convinces her anyway. Of course, Mr. Ed hears this. He tells Wilbur, and then Wilbur's all like, well, I can't tell her not to be with him because then she'll just like jump on him and stuff like that and want to be with him more. So they devise a plan. Hank comes into like the barn and like Mr. Ed pretend to be Amanda with a fake girl's voice. And then he makes Hank like strip down his underwear, and then Wilbur unleashes that raccoon that they never let go, and the raccoon, he also wants him to smear himself with peanut butter. And not only that, but Mr. Ed cusses a lot in this. I'm just like, that just seems so weird and off-putting, you know what I'm saying? Because eventually kids will watch that too, you know? So he strips down to his underwear and he covers himself in peanut butter, and the raccoon's like chasing him out the barn, and Amanda sees that and she's all like, Dad, you was right. He's such a freak and everything. But my new boyfriend, who's 25 years old, is much better. And this is like, what? And then so the little kid brother barely shows up. And like I said before, the handyman keeps catching Wilbur talk to himself, but he's really talking to Mr. Ed. And then all of a sudden the wife goes into the barn and she's all like, the kids are away and all this other. She starts undressing and he's all like, not in the barn. Like the horse was seen. She's like, he's just a horse. He won't notice nothing. Do you not know how good horses' eyes are? They have peripheral vision, but they have like really good eyesight and they can see like really good all around and stuff. And so he knows Mr. Ed is sentient and stuff like that. So he's all like, not in here. And of course, Mr. Ed wants to like see and everything. And it's just a weird pilot, and it's supposed to be this raunchy, humorous thing, but it's not. And it's just like they use like slurs that are outdated. I think Wilbur had kissed Mr. Ed on like his cheek, and he just says, okay, this is the part that somebody might take as homophobic, some might not. When he tells him, you know, he doesn't like, he said, I don't know exactly, he said something like he's not like a side horse, or he doesn't swing, or he doesn't do something like with that way, you know what I'm saying? But it's the way he said it that sounded like offensive a little bit. And all he literally had to say was like, hey man, I'm just not into that, you know what I'm saying? Or something like that. That would have been fine. Or I don't swing that way. But the thing he said sounded slightly like offensive and stuff. And so it's just like, this was a weird, like pilot and everything. And it's just like, it was never ever funny. And even with the laugh track, I never laughed. And I could not believe they tried to make this crap. Thank God somebody, one of the executive like people at Fox saw this and just like, yeah, let's just pass on this. Because this would have been a shame. Like, this would have been a shame and everything. And this would have killed all the careers of the people who was in it, because it was just that bad. Like, it's not good whatsoever. And the thing that don't make no sense is, why did Mr. Ed care so much about the teenage girl Amanda when he literally tells Wilbur he hates all women and she is a female? And so that contradicts exactly what he said, because he tells Wilbur, you need to be a man to your wife and stand up to her and all this other stuff. And it's just like, so then why would he tell him to, like, keep that dude away from your daughter and this and that? So technically he shouldn't even have cared. And the little brother is like barely in this thing. And it's just, like I said before, thank God people bounce back from this, because their acting was atrocious in this show. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.